Okay, thank you for joining this webinar today. And we have Amy Shapley here with Able South Carolina. And this project is made possible in part by a Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services administered by us, the South Carolina State Library. And I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And it worked when we practiced, so hopefully it will continue to work. No, that's not the right screen.
Whoop.
Sorry, wrong screen.
Wrong screen.
Stop sharing. Try this again. There we go. All right, so we are going to, is that visible to folks?
Yes, it looks fine.
All right, so one of the things that we like to do when we present is to model some of the things that we're asking you to do. So I'm just going to give you a visual description, and I'll try to give a visual description of anything that's shared on the screen as well. But I am a white woman with a short blonde pixie cut. I am wearing black rimmed glasses and a yellow shirt with a gray sweater today. And I am the outgoing director of community access at Able South Carolina, and we have a new person coming in, and their name is E.K. Hoffman. But basically what I have been doing is working to create accessibility, to remove barriers for people with disabilities. And at Able, that's really a big part of what we do. So this is on screen, there's a photo of Able staff behind Governor McMaster, and he's signing a disability bill into law, which is actually, I believe this was the Parenting with Disabilities Act. And so we do a lot of advocacy. We are a Center for Independent Living. And so there are 3 centers for independent living in South Carolina, and we are one of them. And we do serve the whole state as far as with advocacy and with working for the rights of people with disabilities. And the work that we do with removing barriers, we work across our state as well as work with different states and different parts of the country to help increase access. So we do a lot of trainings. We also do technical assistance and assessments of websites, of physical structures, of documents and policies and procedures. So we do a lot of work regionally and nationally outside of our state in increasing access. So Centers for Independent Living are organizations that are not about helping people, but we are built on the principle that we help empower people to do the things that they want to do. So it's very self-directed, and it is focused on being as independent as possible. And the on screen is a photo of our staff and board at our 25th anniversary. And so in this image, you can see people from lots of different backgrounds. Some people are sitting in wheelchairs, some people have a white cane or using crutches, some people are standing, some people are seated. There's also a service dog in the foreground, so lots of different folks. But we do try to practice what we preach, and we are so legally, it's mandated that every state have at least one center for independent living, and that's part of the Rehabilitation Act. And it's focused on this idea that consumer control the organization because they're the best experts on their needs, and their perspective is important to create equity and inclusion with how they want to live and work and be a part of their communities. And so with services, with advocacy, with all those things, it's informed by people with disabilities. And so it's mandated that 50% of the staff and board have disabilities. 90% of our staff have disabilities, including myself, and over 50% of our board has a disability as well. So we are community-based. We help people in the community to be a part of the community, and we meet people where they are. We're also consumer-driven. So again, folks inform what they want and where they want to go and what they want to do. We are cross disabilities. So in this presentation, we will talk about different types of disability and how access impacts them. And then we are a nonprofit as well. And it, again, was part of the 1978 amendment to the Rehabilitation Act that provided that there would be consumer controlled centers for independent living. And again, I've already said this, but on this slide, there's an image of our staff at Advocacy Day a couple of years ago. We just had our most recent Advocacy Day in person again. We'd had it online for a couple of years. But again, you can see people in wheelchairs, service animals, and people standing and sitting, and different disabilities are represented there. So we do offer information and referral to people with disabilities, connecting them with resources in the community. They could be disability specific resources. They could be just resources that are there for anyone who needs them. We do help folks develop independent living skills. That could be anything from budgeting to dating life, to employment, to being a self-advocate. So we do lots of different, it's really whatever they want to accomplish, and we help them get there independently. And then we do peer mentoring. So we have some support groups and one-on-one mentoring that takes place. We also do advocacy and transitional services, which can be both transitioning from a restricted care setting to the community, or also transitioning from living at home with your parents to adulthood. So we work with teens transitioning to adulthood, as well as individuals who might live in a nursing setting or different things like that into independent living. And on this slide, there's an image of a sign that's pointing in two directions, that's just kind of an image, an icon of different services that we can direct people to. So why are we talking about accessibility? Well, it's very important, and it's something that's often overlooked. And so we really think it's important that everyone have the same access to information and resources that others might have, not dependent on their disability. So disability does represent the largest marginalized community in the US, and 1 in 4 Americans has a disability, and 1 in 3 South Carolinians has a disability. And disability can really encompass lots of things, from chronic health concerns to acute illnesses, to physical disabilities, visual disabilities, hearing disabilities, psychiatric disabilities. So there are lots of different things that can encompass, but it also crosses all kinds of different social, racial, and cultural groups. So disability is present in every other marginalized group as well. So access to communication really benefits everyone. And that's why it's so important, because we know that getting good information, as you all know, as librarians, is so important, having access to that. So removing as many barriers as possible, not only it helps people with disabilities, but we'll talk about some of the added benefits of other folks who might be able to benefit from having the same access to communication. And then also the need to adhere to federal laws. So sections 508 and 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the ADA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education, or IDEA Act, and the Telecommunications Act. So there are lots of acts that support having accessible communication. So who is affected by disability? Well, people with visual disabilities, that can include blindness, low vision, or color blindness. So when we think about color contrast, having easy to read, clear fonts, those types of things, good spacing, all of that is really important. Hearing disabilities, so that can include the quality of your recording. If you have background noise or other things that are make it hard to differentiate sounds, because people could have low hearing and could also be deaf. So we want to make sure that we are meeting all of those needs. Motor disability, so that can impact ability to use a mouse, can also impact response time and fine motor control. So if you have things maybe that are like a slideshow that's going through that you have to click on, or ability to answer questions on a quiz within a certain amount of time, things like that that you want to think about, as well as making sure that things are navigable by a keyboard and not just a mouse. And that affects multiple groups. And then cognitive disabilities and differences. So that could include learning disabilities, distractibility, inability to remember or focus on large amounts of information. It could be age limitation or age limitations, or lack of computer or internet experience. And all of those might be factors for folks who have cognitive disabilities and differences and may not have the same level of understanding or education on how to use different modes of technology. So the first area of accessibility that we're going to talk about today is plain language and readability. So why is plain language important? Well, fun fact, federal entities must use plain language. And I know what you're thinking is that, well, every time I've seen a government document, it's clearly in plain language and very easy to understand. We know that's not always the case, but it is something that is supposed to happen. And so if folks that you're working with are having trouble understanding documents that are produced by the federal government, and they might be things that you share as a resource in your libraries, if it's instructions for how to do your taxes, or how to apply for benefits, or other federal resources, it's something that you can let folks know that they can advocate for that to be put in plain language if it's not clear and easy to understand. So it does require that federal agencies use clear government communication that the public can understand and use, so that citizens have access to information. And it was established so that public issued documents would be written clearly, and it does help make information more accessible to the public. But plain language can be used by anyone in any setting, and it's a best practice to make sure that you're reaching the broadest audience possible. And what it is it's communication that's made in a way to ensure that as many people as possible can read, understand, and process the information given. So when we use jargon, academic or legal information, complex language, those all create barriers to people who have disabilities. And so with that, it can be a barrier for folks to be able to understand, what is this trying to say, or what direction is this giving me, or what am I supposed to do with this information? So plain language, again, is something that uses everyday language that's accessible to people. People who have low literacy, it benefits. People who speak English as a second language, it benefits. People with disabilities, it also benefits. And then just people who may not have any experience or prior knowledge of the topic that you are talking about. Because if there are acronyms or information in there that's new or unique, it can be difficult for people to understand what that, how to apply that information. So this helps remove some of those barriers. And it's specifically something that self-advocates in the autism and developmental disability movement or community really advocate for, because it helps remove barriers for them in being able to understand how words are being used and what directions are given. So what plain language does is it puts the audience first. So it's really thinking about, who am I talking to? Who's going to be using this? And is there anything that I'm sharing that may not make sense if I didn't know about this information before? It improves your writing style because it helps you get to the point and organize your information in a way that makes sense to the broadest audience possible. It promotes honest and open communication because, you know, you're not trying to hide anything in the middle of a paragraph, but you're making it clear what you're trying to say. It also improves services through cleaner forms, better documents, letters, and signs, that everything is clearly communicated. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't dumb down information for people. It doesn't use improper language. We don't use patronizing language or talk down to people. It doesn't change the essential idea of the content. So we're not changing what's being said, just how it's being presented. And it doesn't use inaccurate, incomplete, or imprecise writing. So I'm a word lover. I have a minor in English in my undergrad. I love words and I love language and structure. So it's not getting rid of those things that we all love about language. It's just helping us drill down to what's really important. So some tips for that, again, know your audience. Who are you talking to? Use everyday language as much as possible. Using personal pronouns like you to direct things to the reader. So instead of saying people with disabilities should take special precautions when interacting with the public during COVID-19, you would say, if you are a person with a disability, you need to you need to keep yourself safe. Here are some ways to do that. So it's really talking to the person instead of talking about the person or about a group of people, and that might not identify if the reader is a part of that group or not. You want to avoid slang. You want to write short and logical sentences. Leave out details that distract your reader or are not important. Avoid undefined technical terms. So a lot of things that we've been putting in plain language for the last year and a half have been about COVID. We can't not use the word vaccine. We can't not use the word COVID or coronavirus. We can't not use a lot of words that are important. But what we do is define those terms when we use them to make sure that everyone's on the same page and knows what we're talking about. So you might be writing about something very technical, but you just want to be clear in explaining what that technical information is. You also want to be very direct and not overly wordy. Use headings, subheadings, margins, and white space to organize information as much as possible so that it can be clearly seen what information is grouped together. You want to make information easy to find, use words with fewer syllables, and keep your wording between the 3rd and 5th grade level. So this is an example for an activity that we're going to try. So this is a before statement, and this is something that we actually did use in some of the work that we did. So the before says, mRNA vaccines contain material from the virus that causes COVID-19 that gives our cells instructions for how to make a harmless protein that is unique to the virus. After our cells make copies of the protein, they destroy the genetic material from the vaccine. Our bodies recognize that the protein should not be there and build T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes that will remember how to fight the virus that causes COVID-19 if we are infected in the future. And so that's from understanding how vaccines work from the CDC, from their website. So what I'm going to do is give you a couple of minutes, either if you want to type out on your keyboard in a Word document or note, or if you want to write on a piece of paper, but pull out some of the words that you think you would need to simplify so that this would be easier for a reader to understand and be put into plain language. So I'm going to give you just a minute, a couple of minutes, and then we'll revisit and hear what you guys have to say. And I'm going to go off camera for just a second to get a sip of my drink. Okay, so either in the chat or if you have or if you want to come off of mute and share. But who would like to give some feedback on what they think are some of the words that you would want to change and what you would change them to, or sentences that you might convert in this paragraph? Don't be shy. Does anyone have any thoughts? Okay, so McCabe said eliminate the explanation of what vaccine does. Maybe genetic material or lymphocyte. Okay, those are some good ones. So we do want to let them know what vaccines do, because we want to know how it's important. But there are a lot of big words in here. So this is an example of how we put this into plain language. So we started with a heading that tells the reader what they're about to read. So what are mRNA vaccines and how do they work? And so we bullet pointed it so that it's in short sentences that break up the information instead of having it in one long paragraph. And so it says mRNA vaccines have a harmless material from the virus that causes COVID-19 in them. This material gives your cells instructions for how to make a protein that is unique to the virus. The cells in your body make copies of this protein. This helps your body recognize that the protein should not be there and build something called T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes to fight the protein that should not be there. If you are infected with COVID-19, these lymphocytes will help your body remember how to fight the virus. So again, there's a lot of information in there. It is surprisingly harder than you'd think. You are correct. And so it really is an art form and something that takes a lot of practice. It is something that I do quite honestly every day. So we do this a lot. We do this as a service, a paid service that we help other organizations with. But we also do this for all the information that we put out. And so we've actually been training several people in our staff to do this work as well. And it does take a lot of effort to really think through, okay, what in here may not make sense? What are the things that might be difficult to understand? And how can I make this cleaner and clearer for the reader? Okay, so in addition to plain language, we like to use a way of formatting that's called easy read. And easy read is written information that's often supported with pictures, and it's clear and easy to read and understand. That's how it got its name, easy read. Easy read helps people who have difficulty reading and understanding written information by using easy words and picture images to reinforce. And it also tells the reader what they need to know. So again, you want to use plain language when you're doing this, and you want to write in short sentences, use one idea per sentence. So bullet points work really well a lot of times. You want to use a larger font that's clear without italics or serifs. You don't want to write in uppercase as much as possible. You want to not use jargon, acronyms, or italics, or underlining. So you want to use bold to emphasize words, and you don't want to use capital letters to emphasize words, because you don't want to get, so all capital letters can mean acronyms. It can also mean this is what I'm trying to say. When we use italics, that can mean different things in different places. So sometimes italics are used for quotes, sometimes they're used for emphasis and things like that. Underlining could be a title, or it could be to emphasize. So we want to try to take out as many of those types of confusing things as possible. You want to use numbers instead of spelling out a number word. So you want to use like the numeral 1 instead of the word O and E. If photos are used, you want to use good quality photos or other images like icons to make sure it reflects what the text is saying. Reducing punctuation as much as you can, and make sure the layout is the same throughout. So if you use a bulleted list in one place, don't switch to a numbered list in the next place. Like, keep things very consistent as much as possible. So readable content is more accessible content. So when we create content using plain language and easy read techniques, you invest some time and effort, like we were just saying. It is something that you have to get used to doing and think about, but it helps benefit others in the long run. You don't end up having to answer as many questions about the content because it's clearer for people, and there's not as much confusion in processes that you may be sharing. So before you start, you want to ask yourself, is this content of long-term interest or need? So is everything that I'm saying important to the reader, or am I adding things that don't really need to be there? And then, can this content be clarified without losing its meaning? So how can I make it more clear for the end user of this information? You also want to organize your information to serve the reader. So you want to arrange your content so that short titles describe each page or section's content and distinguish it from other pages or other sections of content. And you want to put the most unique or relevant information first. So again, like, you want to say, what is the thing that you're describing? So if you're talking about why you should get a library card, the first thing you would say, you'd want to explain what a library card is. And then you would explain that there is a process to getting a library card. You'd say what that process is. And then you'd say, when you come, you need these documents, and then you'd explain those documents. So you want to make sure that you're not talking about information that you haven't already established at the beginning. So if your information is about something, you want to define what that thing is when you start. And you want to use headings to group related paragraphs and clearly describe the sections of your content. Keeping pieces of smaller information because that's easier to digest. And again, using pronouns because they do speak directly to the reader. They make your writing relevant to the reader, and they require less work from your reader to understand who the audience is or who you're talking to. So we're going to try another activity. This one is a little shorter. So again, this one is one of the CDC resources that we use, but it says, the before is, in general, the older you are, the more health conditions you have, and the more severe the conditions, the more important it is to take preventative measures against COVID-19, such as vaccination, wearing a mask, social distancing, and practicing hand hygiene. So again, we're gonna double up here. So we're gonna think about plain language. How do we make this as plain as possible? And then how might you group this information to make the most sense to the reader? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes again to think through this. And then we will regroup and hopefully have some brave souls to share some thoughts on, again, what are some words that might be problematic, and then how would you think about grouping this information so it's the most direct and easy to understand. Okay, what thoughts do we have? You can either, again, use the chat or you can come off of mute. So we have, McCabe says, streamline, remove in general. Oh, remove in general at the beginning. Okay, good. Any other thoughts? Oops. We have bullet list for the 2 list of items, preventative measures in bullet point. Older people tend to be less healthy. They should wear a mask, wash their hands, get a COVID vaccine, use a heading. Great. Okay. So those are all good. So this is an example in easy read. After. So it says, and again, this is talking to some multiple groups. So we're trying to identify the audience. So we say, if you're an older person or a person with a disability, it is important to know how to keep yourself safe from COVID-19. People who are older and have serious health conditions have a higher risk of getting very sick from COVID-19. Things you can do. So that's the second heading. Get a COVID-19 vaccine and booster shot, wear a mask, avoid being in crowded places, stay at least 6 feet away from other people, wash your hands. So hand hygiene, that's, a fun term, but also not very accessible for people. So we want to cut out some of the, just wash your hands, just get a vaccine. So we don't need to overcomplicate the information. So again, you've got, who needs to keep themselves safe? And we say directly to them, if you are this person, you have a higher risk. And then things that you can do to keep yourself safe. And then we have some images of the different things that you can do to keep yourself safe that reinforces that. And these icons come from the Noun Project, which is a resource at the end of the presentation. There's a list of resources for easy read and plain language, and where to get some free, clean and clear icons like this with the Noun Project. And what's also cool about the Noun Project is you can actually, so there's a free version and there's a paid subscription version, and but you can actually put in your colors. So if you have branding colors or anything like that, you can change the colors of the images to match your branding colors. So it's great. There are also 2 other resources that we use to help evaluate your reading level. One is called Rewordify, and the other one is called Rewordify and readable.com. And they're both online things that you can use. The issue with them is they're not accessible websites. So they're great at providing that type of information to make plain language accessible, but they're not accessible to screen reader users, which we'll get into in just a minute. So we do recommend them, but we don't recommend that you share them with people who might have access issues with that. And then you can also use the reading level checker in Word or other Office applications for your computer. So there are lots of ways to check your reading level. Rewordify will actually, you can highlight a block of text and put it in there and it will reword it for you. You probably still need to look at it and figure, because sometimes it doesn't fully make sense the way they reword it, or it doesn't keep the context of what you had wanted. And there may still be better ways to do that, but it will help kind of pull out some of the harder words. And then Readable, you can also highlight and copy in a chunk of text, and it will tell you the reading level, what the issues are, as far as how many long words there are, multisyllable words and things like that. But it won't give you suggestions for what language or words to use. All right, so any questions about readability and plain language before we move on to digital accessibility? Okay, so when we move into digital accessibility, we want to think about lots of different ways that we can think about accessibility. So one of those is to provide captions and other alternatives for multimedia. So if you are putting a video on your website, if you're sharing through a webinar or anything like that, you want to make sure that captions are available. And then also there may be, like if it's a presentation or a video, that there's a transcript that people can read, or other ways that people can get that information. Having a sign interpreter is always great. So making sure that we're meeting the needs of people where if the most of the information is audible, that people who cannot hear can still access that information. You also want to make it easy for users to see and hear all the content. So anything you post on your website or share digitally, you want to make sure that it is high quality, that it's clear and concise, and that people can easily understand it. You also want to make sure that anything that you share, whether it be a document, a digital document, or your website, or applications that you might link to or share from a website, that they are functional from a keyboard and not just mouse. You want to make sure that the content appears and operates in predictable ways. So if on one site, it says click here to complete a form, and on the next page of your website, it says, go to this other website to complete a form. Like, you want to try to keep things as consistent as possible, so that if on one page they go to a menu to get to all of the information, on the next page they're also using a menu, or it's in the text of the page, or in that every page is operating the same way as much as possible. You want to use headings and lists with proper formatting. So headings, both on the web and in documents, a lot of people use them to format the way things look, but really what they do is establish how the order of which things will be read. And so I have a blind staff member, and one of the ways she explains it is that, the heading level 1 is like the title of a book. Like, you just see it on the front page, you don't keep reading the title over and over again. So heading level 1 is kind of like, what is this document about? What is this web page about? The big information. And then heading level 2 is like the chapters of the book. So for each block of information, you want to use the heading level 2 to say, this is what this next section is about. And so you want to kind of think about the chapters of information. Then heading level 3 would be like a section of a chapter. So it could be, sort of either like an indented quote within a chapter or something like that, but it further breaks down information from heading level 2, but it doesn't need its own chapter. It doesn't stand alone by itself. And so once you share that information, if you're still in the same section of content, you go back to heading level 2. So it's kind of embedded in the chapter. Headings level 4 and 5 don't happen a lot unless you're sharing just large amounts of content, like in an appendix or something like that. So we really avoid using headings levels 4, 5, 6, unless you're just really breaking down information to very specifics. So again, if you're creating a document and your heading might be, your heading level 1 might be visiting the library, and then heading level 2 might be location of a library. If you have multiple locations, then heading level 3 could be those multiple locations. And then the next heading level 2 would be, getting your library card, and then you'd list that information. And then the next section of information might be checking out books. And if you have like self-checkout and checkout at the desk, those would be heading levels 3, right? So you'd have heading level 3, checking books out yourself. And then another heading level 3 under that would be checking books out at the circulation desk. And then you go back to heading level 2 for the next activity that you might do at the library. So you're just kind of thinking about organizing information in a way that flows, because what happens is when you're using a screen reader, it's going to follow that pattern. And so whether it's on your web page or within a document, heading levels are really important for that. And also using the list formatting tools so that it's creating bullets or numbered lists rather than you putting in number 1 and listing something number 2, because it's not going to read it as a list necessarily. It's just going to read it as 1, blah, blah, blah. So it helps to further differentiate and keep things in order for a screen reader. And then you want to provide text alternatives for non-text content. So that could be any type of visual information. That could be a map or a heat map. It could be a graph or a chart. It could be a picture, an icon, a photo, an illustration, anything that's a visual representation of information. Tables, all of those things, they need alternative text to represent what someone with sight could see visually from that picture or content. So these are some concepts that you might encounter. So alt text, which we kind of just talked about, but it's text that's invisible unless you're using a screen reader, and it's a short description of an object or image. And what that does is, so as a page is being read by a screen reader, when it gets to an image that has alt text, it will read what that alt text is. So it might, so if my photo was there, it might say, image of Amy, she's a white woman with short blonde pixie cut and wearing black glasses. So it would have the information. If it was a heat map, it might say heat map showing the incidence of flu cases for 2022 in the United States of America. And then most likely what you need to do is say, see chart below, that would then tell you what is in that heat map that you wouldn't be able to get from the alt text. And so it's usually very short pieces of information. If it's something that's very complicated, like a graph or a heat map or something like that, then you'd want to make sure that you have that broken down into a different type of text somewhere else. And we'll go into a little more detail about that. You want to make sure that you use column headings and tables, because that makes it possible for a screen reader to interpret a table. So making sure that you format a table in the most traditional way possible. And again, and also don't use tables to format information just to make it side by side, because that makes it very difficult for a screen reader can't read that in the right order. So you want to make sure that it's going left to right, top to bottom, reading column and row, because that's really important. Making sure that your section headings have meaningful names, because that makes it possible to navigate larger amounts of content. So headings are, again, different from headers. So you might have a header row in your table, but a heading is what we just talked through. So it kind of tells you what is the information that's going to be here. And you can skip from heading to heading level to say, okay, well, I don't need to read that. So you'll skip to the next heading level. Restricted access. So when you're editing, you have to enable for a screen reader to access content in a Word document. Also, if you convert it to a PDF, you want to make sure that PDFs are accessible before you share them. So if you scan something to a PDF, it's only going to view that as a picture. It's not going to view that as individual content or words. So it's just like making a copy in a copier machine. All you get is a picture of what was on the page. You don't get the actual formatting or individual words. So you'd basically have to alt text anything on that page if you scan something as an image into a PDF. And then reading order, you can specify the logical reading order so that screen readers announce content in a meaningful way. So you want to make sure that you're doing all those things when you're creating documents and content on websites. So we want to make these changes wherever possible. Some common places are Google Docs or Pages or Sheets or Forms. Some parts of Google Suite are more accessible than others, like a Google form is very accessible. If you need to do a survey or a quiz or something like that, filling out those forms, there's multiple choice questions and all those things you can use. Those are great and very accessible, but the Google Docs don't have as many accessibility features as a Microsoft Word document. In Microsoft, you want to think about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, any of those that you might be using. And then in Adobe, PDF is the big one. There are other products as well, but anywhere that you're making digital documents, forms, information that you'd be sharing, you want to make sure that that is accessible. Again, Google Docs has some basic accessibility control, but they're not as advanced as Microsoft or Adobe in their features. And if you export export to a PDF that's been saved from a Google document, a lot of times, a lot of the accessibility features are left out in that conversion. So then you have to, if you have an Adobe editor version like DC Pro, you can go in and fix that, but it's a lot of work on the back end. In Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, you want to use the styles provided, especially for headings, not just, again, for the looks, but for how you're actually formatting your information. You want to verify that all images have descriptive alternative text, including charts and other elements. Using color responsibly. So again, using bold versus italics to emphasize text when needed. Make sure that link text is meaningful and descriptive. So instead of just saying click here, telling someone where that click here is going to take them. So you would say something like website to register for event linked here. That would be the whole, and then you would hyperlink that. So that whole thing that I just said would be your descriptive link, not just click here or link here. So you want to tell them where it's taking them and what it's for in the link, because what happens is if it's reading and they click on the link, they need to know where it's going to take them. You want to identify your document language, and then remember that tables are for data, not layout, and you want to label your column and row headings appropriately. So it's very easy to check your accessibility in Word and PowerPoint. This is a built-in feature to all Word and PowerPoint. So what you do is you go in the Microsoft Suite, you go to File menu, and then Inspect Document under Check for Issues, Inspect Document, and then you go down to Check Accessibility. And so when you click on that, then it will pull up an accessibility dialog box. So on the previous page, there's a picture of that menu. It has a Check for Issues icon. Then below that, it has a drop-down menu that says Inspect Document, then Check Accessibility, then Check Compatibility, and you'd select Check Accessibility. And then it will bring up a dialog box that will show you what is missing or incorrect and give you information about how to fix the issue, which is very helpful. And so I have two examples on the screen, and they're both outlined by orange boxes to just show that there are two different dialog boxes. And so the first one was of a PowerPoint. And so you can see it has a dialog box that shows errors. And so it has some missing alt text. And it's picture 2, slide 30. And so when you click on that link, it'll take you actually to that image that needs alt text. And then there are some warnings about unclear hyperlink text, and then just some tips like that there are duplicate slide titles, things like that, that you want to make sure you're addressing. And then it has additional information. And then where it says read more about it, it tells you how and why you need to fix that. And so it'll give you the instructions for actually how to add the alt text there. And then in the other dialog box next to that, we have one for the accessibility checker, and this is for a Word document, and it has errors, missing text, picture 1. And again, if you were to click on that, it would take you to the image, that's the picture that's missing alt text. It has a lot of warnings. This was actually a government document, so it has a whole bunch of procurement links and SC State House links that all are very long and don't have a descriptive text for them. And then again, it has the additional information and read more about making documents accessible. So that's built into everything, any PowerPoints or Word documents that you might use, and you can easily make them accessible. And if you make a Word document accessible and convert it to a PDF, most of that accessibility should stay and transfer to the PDF. There are things that you can do to further increase the accessibility, but for the most part, if your Word document is accessible, your PDF from that Word document will also be accessible. So some important reminders specifically for PowerPoint. If you're using images or tables, use title-only slides. You do want to title every slide so that a screen reader will know what the content is of that slide and that's moved on to another slide. But what you don't want to do is layer a picture on top of a text box, because what it's going to do with the screen reader is going to try to read the text box, and it's going to try to read the image that you put there, or the table, or whatever else you got it. You want to use a continue or number if it's a repeated title. So you may have noticed in this one when we said, what is plain language 1, what is plain language 2, so that you know, like, you've moved on to another section of content, but you're still in the same topic area. All images and shapes need alt text. You want to avoid templates with a large number of decorative elements, because it's going to read those. It's going to say decorative element, decorative element. So this is a pretty good one that I'm using. It's just using color and lines, colored bullets as a way to break up information, but it's not using like a lot of circles or squares or swirls or anything like that. So you want to keep it as simple and clean as possible. Again, all links need a description of where the link leads, and then videos should be captioned or interpreted for deaf and hard of hearing participants. So screen readers, we've been talking about screen readers a lot, so I want to explain them a little more to you so you understand how those work. So blind and other visually disabled people use screen readers to access digital content. And what they do is they translate written content into audible content. So we'll literally read the words to the person audibly. And blind users navigate with a keyboard instead of a mouse, because as most of you know, a mouse is something where you have to see what's on the screen so you know where to point and click. So the navigation with a keyboard, there are some shortcuts, but they also use the arrow keys, the enter key, things like that to navigate through the page of content. And then there are other individuals who may use screen readers for various reasons, and that could include screen fatigue, auditory learning as a strength, or reading comprehension issues. Also used a lot by people who maybe have dysphagia or difficulty speaking, difficulty focusing or paying attention, people who have developmental disabilities. A lot of folks with autism like to use screen readers. So there can be a lot of different reasons why people use screen readers. It might be that it's just the easiest way to navigate content if someone has a mobility issue, and it's much easier for them to navigate with the keyboard. So there are lots of reasons why people use screen readers, but the primary audience that it was developed for were those who are blind and visually disabled, because it can read the content to them that's written on the screen. So you actually have access to screen reader right now. There's VoiceOver on iOS or TalkBack on Android. Some other screen readers that people use, especially on desktops, are JAWS and NVDA. It's the pro versions of Adobe, and some of the other versions have like an Adobe reader that reads the screen. So it can be built into other programs as well, just like within their own program. There are free screen readers that you can download and try out if you're interested to see how they work. But you can play around with them and try them out now if you would like. Well, maybe not right now, but after this presentation, you can try them out. So with the accessibility checkers that we just discussed, especially there are also one of the ones we use is through WebAIM, and it's called Wave, W-A-V-E, and it's a plugin that you can get on your browser, and you can put it on multiple browsers. It works with Firefox, Chrome, Explorer, and you can download it, and when you activate the plugin, it won't automatically do it, but if you activate it, it will show you accessibility issues on your web page, whether you're visiting a web page and want to see how accessible it is, or if you want to look at the ones that you use already. And some pros to that are that they're very educational and eye-opening. They tell you things that exist. They also teach you some new concepts that you didn't know. They're often free and you can use them immediately. The reports do give you a list of issues and helps you learn about built-in features and applications. And you don't have to be an IT professional or an accessibility professional to be able to use it, or a rocket scientist. You just have to know how to use your browser. The cons is that sometimes it doesn't pick up on things that screen reader have issues with, like there are certain loops or traps that screen readers can get stuck in where they can't move on off of an image or an item or a list, and it won't show you that. It also might say there's something wrong when it's really not. So you really need to be able to visually check things and make sure visually and work with someone who uses a screen reader to make sure. And often they can only work with certain browsers or software programs, so they could have a limited application. And then the reports need to be properly interpreted. So one of the things that we've been working on is a big project with some PDFs, and we've been trying to make them 508 compliant for an organization, but by making them 508 compliant, they're not actually accessible. And so the screen reader has a lot of issues with them, even though they're showing up that they're 508 compliant. So they can meet a checklist and still not be working for certain screen readers. And so you definitely want to make sure that you're working with folks who are end users to ensure that things really are as accessible as you think they are. So you might think you've cleared all the issues and there could still be issues there. Or you might think that there are problems and the screen reader can read it perfectly. So actually with these documents, we have two versions. One is a screen reader version that looks like it's not 508 compliant, and then a 508 compliant version that is not screen reader friendly. So sometimes you run into these issues and you have to think about what is really the best thing for the end user. So one of the things that's very important for screen readers, both online and in documents, is having alt text. And so the breakdown on alt text is it is there to provide a description of visual content. It's for people who are blind or low vision. It should be used for photos, graphics, tables, charts, etc. Anything that is a visual representation of information. If you're sharing videos, providing a video description is also helpful. That can be done in a transcript form if you're not able to do a voiceover description. But back to our alt text, there's a difference between alt text and image description. So the alt text, as we mentioned earlier, is coded into the picture. It reads it. It doesn't show up for other readers. It only shows up for a screen reader. An image description is longer and it's put in the post or the body of the content. So these are especially helpful for social media, because if someone doesn't have to click on the image, they can just read the body of the post, and there's an image description that says the picture that you shared. And so we usually use the shortened version. We just say ID for image description, a colon, and then say what the picture is. If you're doing something like publishing technical information, or if you're sharing a table or map or anything like that that has very detailed information, what you want to do is in the alt text, say what it is. So this is a map of the United States showing where the greatest populations are by city or something like that. And then underneath it, you could put either in a table that's properly formatted, or write out the description of what someone would see in that chart if they were able, or in that map if they were able to see it. So if you've got a pie chart, you'd want to describe, the 56% of the population is, eats pizza 6 times a year is shown in red. 12% of the population who eats pizza 2 times a year is shown in blue, whatever it is, I don't know. But I'm sure that's not at all accurate for pizza eating, but you would describe it in that way. So you want to have those image descriptions for either complex information or something that's very detailed. So it could be a picture that has a lot of elements that's important for the reader, but you only want to add that level of detail if it's important for the reader. And so when you alt text something, you only want to add what's meaningful. If things are not necessary, then in some programs you can tag them as a decorative item, and you just want to say, like, that's just decoration, it's not important. It's not something that the screen reader needs to read to be able to access information. So this is an example of alt text. there's an image, and the image description or the alt text says close up of 2 Black and disabled women smiling and holding hands. The woman in the back is wearing compression gloves and looking lovingly at the woman in the front who's sitting in a power wheelchair. So that is an example of alt text. So now you guys are going to try. So we're going to do another activity. So there's a picture on the screen, which I'm not going to describe to you yet because that's part of the activity. And so take a minute or two to write out how you would describe this image for alt text. So if you had added this image to a document or your website, how would you describe it, the alt text, so that a screen reader would know what you were sharing? And I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to work on that. All right, so if you would like to share in the chat or come off of mute and let me know how you would describe this image. All right, so McCabe says an able sign with 4 people hanging from a green lamppost in front of blue sky with clouds, treetops, and the dome of the Capitol building. Very good. Anyone else want to share? That was very good. All right, so, oh yeah, that was good. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next slide. So this is what we put, a lamppost with a banner on it that has an illustration of 4 diverse people with different disabilities, and the text "Disability Pride SC." In the distance behind the lamppost is the top of SC Capitol building against a cloudy blue sky. So you want to make sure that, and what I say is, like, think about why you added that image, right? So did you add it because it's pretty, or did you add it because you want to say something about disability pride in South Carolina? What is the takeaway? So if you're adding anything that you're adding, you want to think about, what did I want the reader to get from this? What is it reinforcing, or what is it accentuating? And then that's what you want to put in your alt text. So if it's just showing that, you know, if it's just a filler, that's one thing, but so that could be decorative. But if it's something that's like reinforcing an action or activity, or so you really want, it makes you think about, why am I putting this picture here, and what does the reader need to know? So again, we really try to think about inclusion and not making assumptions about people. So unless we know specifically what their race or gender or pronouns or disability is, we don't want to assume that. And it might be, there are some like Getty Images and some other places where those things are already put in the in the image description, or it might be that it's a picture of someone you know and they've disclosed those things to you, but you don't want to make assumptions about people unless you know who they are. So we do have a lot of images that we use on our site and social media that are of staff. So we know what their disability is, we know what their pronouns are, we know what their racial identity is, and those kind of things. So we definitely want to make sure that we're using images of people, you know, that we know that about, or we don't share that information. Some reminders about alt text. So there are a lot of platforms where you can use alt text if you're doing social media for your library. So Facebook, in the desktop, you can go to edit image and then select alternative text, and you would enter the alternative text there. In the app, you'd click on the ellipsis or the ... and then select alternative text. And you may also want to include an image description in the body of the post, just because it makes it easier for screen readers to use that. And there's no character limit that you have to worry about. With Twitter, you would edit the photo that you're sharing and then select Alt, A-L-T, and then put in your images, your alt text. Image descriptions aren't recommended for Twitter since you have a character limit, and you can't go back and edit it if something is wrong. And then with Instagram, you would go to advanced settings and then select write alt text. So before you share your photo, you'd scroll down to advanced settings, and then you'd select the write alt text and you'd write it there. If you're going to share across multiple platforms, I would encourage you to put that text in one place and copy it and use it over and over again, so you have the same alt text and don't have to type it a bunch of times. So that's a lot of information about digital accessibility and plain language and how to make things as accessible as possible. We're here for you because it's most important to consult with organizations that are run and operated by people with disabilities like Able South Carolina. If you have any advisory committees or groups that inform your work, boards of directors, I would encourage you to include people with disabilities on those, because they're the best source of information about their community, and often overlooked as a group that needs to be represented. But accessibility is an ongoing process, so it's something that you have to do every time. You have to think about it every time you write a post, every time you share a document, every time you update your website. You want to think about how these things affect accessibility. But the more steps you take ahead of time, the less work you have to do in the checking and the remediation. So if you can make things accessible on the front end, then it's not as much work to fix it on the back end. We have a great team that is here to help if you need it, and making sure that your location, information, and your services, policies, and procedures are fully accessible. So again, we do architectural assessments, digital accessibility testing and training like I did today, policy and procedure review, and job site assessments and recommendations for hiring people with disabilities as well. And there's an image of one of our trainers, Dory, giving a presentation, and some of you have been in trainings with Dory on disability sensitivity or hiring people with disabilities. She's a great trainer. She has a lot of energy and she's really awesome. So any questions, you can reach out to me, or you can also reach out to advocacy at able-sc.org. That's like our general. And there are a lot of resources on our website, able-sc.org, if you want to look into further things. Here are some resources, and I will share this with Tiffany to send out to everybody. So there's several plain language resources. There's a self-advocacy network that has information on plain language. We have the Federal Plain Language Act information. We also have Center for Plain Language, and the ADA.gov has a section on effective communication. And then MNCAMP's Making It Clear Guide to Making Easy Read Information, which is again about how you format information after you've made it into plain language. Also the Noun Project, which has great images and symbols that you can include in easy read. Rewordify, one of the websites I told you about that gives suggestions for plain language. And it also it's a youth-friendly teaching resource as well. And then the WAI standard guidelines, that's the WCAG, which we call it. And it's a resource on what are the items and elements that make digital content accessible. So that is the end of my presentation. Do we have any questions, concerns, thoughts? So again, I know that was a lot of information. I am going to share the PowerPoint so that you can go back and reference it, where some of those tools are and how to navigate some of those things. And and just have some good reminders of things to be thinking about as you're creating content. But if there are any questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.